give the Lord a big hand clap of praise. I promise you, if I didn't know the Lord, I'd give my life to him right now. I think he did a marvelous job. Didn't he do a great job? We've got just a few more things to do. You may be seated. One of the things that I have to thank Mayor Hales for is I was invited at the vigil that was held at City Hall for Roseburg. You may remember last year that we lost a lot of brothers and sisters down there due to violence and hate. And on that platform that night, there were several preachers that were invited to speak. I was not one of them. I meant to ask the mayor, how could you have me there and not have me speak? But that didn't happen. Actually, it wasn't his issue. But I tell you who did speak that night. A young lady by the name of Maya. Now, I'm not even going to try to pronounce her last name because I know I'll mess it up. But I'll tell you what, Maya, literally, I don't care what the rest of us said, Maya was the compelling person that night. And I went up to her and I said, Maya, she writes her own authentic poetry. And she wrote one that night for Roseburg. It was astounding. And I said, Maya, if you would, we would like to have you as a part of our service in January. And she said that she would be here. And I thank her. Are your parents here today?
Yeah, my mom is in the front with a red phone.
Oh, good morning, Mom. Go on. We're glad to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be speaking here in the same church that Dr. King spoke at, as I have just learned, actually. And I also I've had a little bit of exposure to the work of Dr. King, not just through history classes, but I was actually lucky enough to take a family vacation to Atlanta a couple years ago. And as part of that, we went to the museum that kind of immortalizes Dr. King. And as part of that museum, there was his childhood home that people could actually take a tour and go on. And so I got to, look through the same windows that Dr. King looked out of when he was a child, and I got to sit on the same steps that Dr. King sat on. And it was absolutely beautiful to just be exposed to that spirit that is still there with the home place of Dr. King. And this even though in Atlanta, there's also the Coca-Cola Museum that has over 300 flavors of Coca-Cola. This was by far my favorite part of this trip. And it made me think about what really Dr. King is about, who he is as a person, and if there's anything out of the many lessons that we can take from his ministry and what he did in terms of civil rights, it's that bravery is the only way to make change. Dr. King was fearless in his approach. And so when we're fighting the evils that we have in our society, we need to use that same bravery and courage to do this. And I would like to say that the shooting at Umpqua Community College was a prime example of why we need change. Because while there's so much terrorism and violence happening within this country, and there's a common misconception that the perpetrators of this violence come from Arab Muslim communities and are people of color, when in fact that is not the truth. And this is directly caused by nothing other than blatant racism. And the reason why this violence still happens in our country is because complacency has forced its way into our society.
That's right.
There is so much complacency that we tend to believe that other people are the problem to our issue of violence in this country, when it is indeed happening, and there is something we can do about it.
Amen.
And thank you. And if there's anything we can learn from Dr. King, it is that we need to shun complacency in its whole in order for change to occur, in order for the quality of life of our citizens to be exponentially better. And this is the premise I wrote this poem around, and I will actually read the poem that I read at the vigil that Reverend or Pastor Hennessy invited me to speak because of. And this poem is titled Under Attack. America, we are under attack. As guns burst in our classrooms, the federal government signs the Patriot Act because we are willing to spend billions of dollars protecting ourselves against foreign threats. But America, how can we begin to forget the lives lost at our own triggers? It's 1999, and at Columbine High School, 2 students opened fire on their peers. The sound of those bullets ripping the air in their way must have been the most terrifying last sound to hear. And while I can only imagine what it would be like to live my last moments enslaved within the grasp of a gun-breathing death, I don't have to imagine anymore. Because mass violence is happening next door. I go to sleep every night making sense of the popping sounds blaring outside. I go to sleep every night remembering the time my little brother was playing in a park, dribbling his basketball to the rhythm of 3 gunshots because it could have been him. He could have been one more body in the count, one more statistic in our textbooks, because America, 2015 will go down in our records as a year with more mass shootings than days so far. We are under siege, spilling our dollars, protecting ourselves against supposed Muslim extremists when we hear gun barrels emptying themselves into our schools, into our communities, into our country. And we continue to preach freedom. But in a nation with 89 guns per 100 people, freedom is not our reality. Because we live under a crushing system that finds going to the funeral of a child more socially acceptable than sending a mentally ill potential shooter into therapy. This destruction is our reality. This destruction is our status quo. But this destruction is not the way things have to be. We need to recognize the problem of domestic terrorists running this country. We need to strengthen our gun regulations on the hands that touch guns. We need to put child-safe padlocks on every gun cabinet. We need to provide therapy for violent kids so the parents of fallen children do not have to regret the day they sent their child to school. This is a problem that we can no longer ignore because we are under attack. But this time, the attacker is us. Thank you.
See why I asked her to come. I am grateful. I'm a believer. I grew up writing poetry, reciting, and all of that. Some of those things don't happen so much anymore. Amen. But it's one of the things that I think is so important to be able to share the soul. And today we heard the soul of this young lady, and we thank God for you. Amen. She's a 16-year-old student at Lincoln High School. Amen. And by the way, you do notice that she stood up here with confidence. I do want that to be clear, right? She literally commanded the stage. My friends, we are just about done. There are 2 Imam